Courvoisier and Rheingold. The ritual is the formula. Black leather on the inside. New York round the corner.
Congratulations on the new release.
Thank you very much.
So you guys have formed a band called Night Crickets, and the album is called A Free Society. So give me a little backstory about how this is all kind of a pandemic-driven thing. Is that right?
Well, of sorts. I mean, it started before the pandemic in that in the year 2013,
Right.
Violet Femmes were playing a series of shows, and two of the shows we did were at the Coachella Music and Arts Festival in California. And backstage at that event, I met Darwin Meiners, and he is a multi-instrumentalist that lives outside of San Francisco, and he also happens to be the manager of David J.
Right.
So we carried on a conversation and became fast friends, stayed in touch. I helped him with one of his records and appeared in one of his videos. And then about a year ago, this past holiday season, he got in touch with me and he said, "Hey, Victor, is there a chance I could pay you to create some wild drum tracks for me?" Wild meaning just naked drum tracks with no other instrumentation.
Yep.
And I said, sure, I could do that, because he wanted to create some songs around my drum tracks. And I took the idea a step further and I said, well, what if I did that? But also, what if you see if David would be interested in maybe joining in and we could write some material together? And he said, wow, that sounds like a great idea. Let me throw it to David and see what he says. So luckily, David came back and he was enthused about the idea as much as Darwin and I were.
Right.
So that was the beginning of Night Crickets.
Cool. Well, I mean, on paper, if the combination of Bauhaus and Violet Femmes may not be the first thing on the list, as far as getting together, but obviously it's working out pretty well. So how did you have a discussion about what you're going to sound like, or did you was it more organic than that? How did it happen?
Well, one thing to address your last point, when I finally met David in person, we were talking about musical influences, and he told me, swear to God, that Bauhaus was influenced in a way by Violet Femmes, which I'm not sure about that, but that's what he told me. So I'll just go with that being the truth.
Okay.
No, we didn't really discuss what the music was going to sound like or any particular strategy that we had in mind. The only thing we knew was that I was going to send rough drum tracks and they were going to start applying music to them.
Gotcha.
And then when they would send the tracks back to me, I would supply other music, and maybe if it would be a lyric or a vocal, or maybe some other ideas that I would throw into the collective musical pot. But at the same time, we didn't want to restrict ourselves in any way. So we weren't going for a Bauhaus sound or a Violet Femmes sound or Love and Rockets or what have you.
Yep.
So it was all, I guess, handled in a very organic fashion. We wanted things to come about just because of the mixture of the three of us together.
Cool. And so when you say you were just making wild drum tracks, so these are drum tracks that aren't really attached to a song per se at this point, right?
Right. I have a studio here in Milwaukee called the Past Office, which I've had for over 3 decades.
Uh-huh.
And every once in a while, when I have some downtime, when I'm not doing anything else, I'll maybe just put up some drums and some microphones, and I'll just record some drum tracks to some kind of a time reference, whether it be a drum machine or just a strict click track.
Right.
And I do that with the hopes of in the future, maybe I will write some music to them, or in this case, I could throw them to Darwin and to David, and they could start fiddling around with them and writing some music.
Yeah. So do you like working like that, starting from the bottom up?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting working in not only working that way, but in working in a remote fashion,
right,
where we're just sending tracks back and forth. But to tell you the truth, in all my years of experience of not only writing and recording music, being a musician, being a producer, being an engineer, I've found that I've been called on to work in many different fashions. So,
right.
So whatever shows up to me that seems to be brand new, I'm really excited about.
Because it almost seems like with the pandemic and COVID and all this stuff happening, it's almost reinvented the way bands work or form or interact with each other. where nobody was thinking about this 2 years ago, you know.
Or in some cases, it's led to the destruction of bands.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Because this damn plague. I mean, it's really hard to get around this plague, but luckily, in terms of the Night Crickets, we really found a way to work together remotely that was satisfying. And also, I'd have to say, tooting our own horn a little bit here.
Toot away.
That what we came up with sounds natural. It doesn't sound like it's pieced together in a puzzle fashion, which sometimes you get that effect of working remotely.
Yep.
But I think there's a very musicality to what we did, and also something that sounds almost like we're in the same room playing together, which was something that we didn't really address as a problem. It just turned out that it didn't turn out to be a problem for us.
Cool. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple of tracks. The first one being Candlestick Park, because it's referencing the San Francisco Park and baseball and the Beatles and all that stuff, which is kind of like the band, kind of American, kind of English coming from. So tell me how you got involved in that.
Just a couple of kids, August 66. The screams were such, you never heard a thing. They were bigger than Jesus. You were selling peanuts at the stick that day, but no one bought a thing.
Oh, I like that. I never thought of that before, the English and the American combination there. That's a good one.
Okay.
Well, I was presented that track by Darwin. He had sent me a guitar and vocal track. So what I did was just apply drums to the track then. This was before David put his bass on or any other instrumentation was added. And that was one of our first exercises of working together.
Uh-huh.
And I really enjoyed the lyric because I'm such, as the three of us are, we're huge Beatle fanatics. So that was great to get this little insight into how Darwin's parents met at Candlestick Park.
Oh, did they? Very cool.
Yes, that's kind of what the story is about in a way as well. And then to try to develop the song using what we knew about what happened when the Beatles came to America and how we could apply that in a musical sense. I know that doesn't really make that much sense, but to us, we were thinking that way. And I'm very happy with what turned out, because not only do we have a great homage to the Beatles, but also we have a combination of all our different styles taking effect for the first time. Musical styles, I mean, between the three of us.
Yep.
There's also a fellow that is, I think, a friend of Darwin's that played some beautiful mellotron on that track.
Uh-huh.
And then also a woman by the name of Janet Schiff, who plays the cello solo. And Janet and I also have a duo here in Milwaukee called 1913. And the reason it's called 1913 is that Janet's cello was built in Transylvania in the year 1913.
Of course it was.
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic. So the album begins with a song called Black Leather on the Inside and ends with a song called I Want My Crickets. So how much thought was put into the running order of the album? Is that part of the deal, or are they just kind of there, the tunes?
Well, that was kismet, the way those two songs bookended the album.
Right.
It was my responsibility to sequence the album because I've got a pretty good idea about doing that. I've done it many times for many different bands and of course for my own material. And I'd have to say that I was really happy that when I proposed the order, everybody else seemed to think it was a good order.
Cool.
I had listened to the order, of course, to see what it came off like. And I was happy with it. I think it tells a little story in and of itself. And also I tried to divide up the lead vocals between the three different members. So you didn't have two lead vocals from one person right next to
back. Yeah, cool. And I Want My Crickets ends the album with the sound of crickets, obviously. But just before that, speaking of wild drums, there's kind of a drum solo-y thing happening there. So tell me a little bit more about how that track was put together.
Well, that particular track had a different drum part. I had sent a different wild drum track that they built the music around. But then for some reason or another, I wasn't too thrilled with that particular track. So I said, would you guys mind if I tried to apply a different drum set to the piece? And they said, no, go ahead. Go and try and see what you come up with. So I came up with more of just a straight ahead. I think I just used a snare drum, a hi-hat, a bass drum, and one cymbal on that particular drum track. And they liked what I came up with. So we superimposed that onto the music and took the other drum track off. And I like that there's a little bit of freedom in the drum track, but also a lot of it is just rock steady, straight ahead playing.
Cool. And there is a bit of a political overtone to some of the songs. There's unreliable narrator. So I don't know who's written what, if you all wrote together, if there's separate songs. So help me out there, but what can you say about the unreliable narrator? Is that referring
Well,
to
I love that track, and I love lyrically what's being said. David wrote the text for that track.
Okay.
And also, of course, he performs the track.
The unreliable narrator gets his intel second-hand from disreputable sources, not au fait with the lay of the land. He listens to Chinese whispers from sisters of the church, of conspiracy and hearsay, where little birds do perch.
Yeah, that's really a humdinger, that one. I think it kind of addresses a lot of what's happening in our society here in America, and also just what's happening in the world at large.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're not alone in that respect. It's even happening down here.
True enough.
Even though comparatively speaking, we're doing pretty well COVID-wise, there's still conspiracy theories and alternative facts all over the place down here as well. So.
Right. Well, thank God at least Peter Jackson can make a good Beatles documentary.
Yeah, what'd you think of it? You like it?
You know, can I tell you the truth? I haven't seen it yet because I knew that there was going to be a Blu-ray coming out.
Right.
And I'm banking on there might be some extra added material.
Yep.
So on, February 8th, I believe it's released here in America.
Yeah.
I've already ordered mine, so I will certainly be watching on February 8th. And I've resisted watching a lot of the clips. And also I've had to tell a few of my friends to shut up when they started describing to me what was going on. But I'm really looking forward to it.
Brace yourself. It's a long and winding road, but it's a good one.
That's all right. I'll go down that road.
Excellent. So of the songs on the album, which ones are you closest to, do you think? Can you
Well, of course, the ones I sing.
Okay.
No, I'm just,
one out for me.
I'm just kidding. I like them all. I think that the combination of the different vocal stylings, the musicianship that's featured, and also I had never had the opportunity until now to play drums to David's bass.
Right.
And I really like the combination of our drum bass section.
Right. So how did that happen? Because you weren't in the same room together, right?
Right.
So the drum and bass thing is a pretty organic thing usually.
Well, in this way, we turned it into some kind of a what would you say? Yes, I mean it's preferable to be, of course, in the room with who you're playing with, so you can have an intimate reaction.
Right.
But I guess because I've recorded and I've been an engineer and a studio owner for so many years, that it's not so out of the ordinary for me to apply drums to something that's already almost finished, or something that maybe has a little bit of time wavering here and there.
Right.
Because once something is recorded, that is the time.
Right.
And if there's a hiccup here or there, you have to You have to work with that as an accompanying musician. So playing drums to David's bass sometimes was a surprise when I would get the track back and he had applied his bass. And many of the occasions I felt that, wow, this sounds like we were in the same room just playing together. And I would have to put that down to just David and I are really good musicians, and we've been recording for many decades.
So have the three of you ever been in the room together?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I was out visiting in Los Angeles, and I got to meet them both because I had done some work on a video that Darwin was putting together for one of his records.
Right.
And David was also part of that video.
So for me and for a lot of folks, Darwin will be the unknown quantity in this group. So tell me a little bit more about him. I know he managed David J as well, but as a musician, what is his background?
Well, primarily he plays guitar, but he also plays some other instruments, and he's a very good recording engineer. And as a matter of fact, he mixed the album. David more or less just added his parts, but the final organization, the mix was done by Darwin. I've done a little bit of the mixing as well, but he was the primary mixologist in this particular case.
All righty. One other song I wanted to touch on was Amanda's Mantra.
Yes.
Who is Amanda, and what is? I know Marilyn and James Dean are kind of name checked in there, and there's a sax solo. So what's happening here?
Looking past Marilyn, kissing James Dean. Whoever thought forever would begin in a dream. She's writing words of wisdom for America and the world. She's writing words of wisdom for America and the world.
Amanda Gorman is a young poet here in America. She read at Joseph Biden's inauguration.
Okay.
And David became a big fan of hers, as was I and Darwin. And he proposed that we write a song about her. And originally the music that you hear backing on that track came together because I had a wild drum track that utilized the original setup that I had on the first Violet Femmes album, which was a Gretsch snare drum, a folk art instrument I created called the transophone, which is essentially a floor tom from a drum set with a metal bushel basket on the top. And then you play that with metal string brushes, so you get some kind of a ping out of the head of that.
Right.
And then also if you hit in the middle, you get more of a thump because of the drum underneath. So, and then I overdubbed a cymbal. So that is what the backing track there that they worked from. When I got back the music that they put on it, first of all, I was just really surprised by the keyboard parts, which I think are really brilliant that David played. And I was going to write a lyric having to deal with a friend of mine, this girl that I'd gone to high school with that had recently passed. I was going to write more or less a tribute to her, but David had in mind doing something about Amanda Gorman because he was really fascinated by her and her poetry. So I figured, well, you know, that probably makes sense to put it in that realm, even though maybe I'll be thinking about my friend when I'm writing this.
Right.
So I figured because she is a poet, you have the first section, which you referred to about Marilyn Monroe and James Dean. That's almost a little 4-line poem that I wrote. And then the other part is just talking about Amanda and how hopefully the beauty of her words and her sentiment will do something to not only influence thought in America, but also in the world at large.
Okay. So are you optimistic about America?
I'm a pretty optimistic person in general, but certainly these are some of the darkest days in America that I've ever gone through. Yeah.
So do you see the band as it is going out and doing gigs and stuff like that?
Well, I would love that. I mean, we've talked about it. I have some commitments to play with 1913. And of course, David has some shows coming up sometime soon with Bauhaus.
Right.
But the three of us have discussed that, and I don't think it's certainly out of the realm of possibility. I would really like to hear what it sounds like live.
So would I.
Yeah.
And it'd be cool to see you and David, face to face or whatever, playing off each other a little
Side
bit.
by side, right?
Yeah. That'd be cool. Excellent. Well, thank you for talking to me on the release day here in New Zealand. It's fantastic. And I know you've been here a few times with the Femmes and all that. So maybe.
Yeah, I'd have to say hello to everyone in New Zealand, and I love your country. I've had some really great times there, and I'm really looking forward to sometime getting back.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.